Hi everyone, can you please use the chat to let me know if you can actually hear me now that the broadcast is live? Brilliant, so you can hear me. Right. So what I'm going to go through today is the exam paper for your summer exam, which will be taking place when you come back after Easter. What won't be happening after Easter is us having any teaching weeks at that point. So what that means is that you're going to have to look at the exam paper now and start preparing answers during the term. So we wanted to give you the exam briefing up front so you've got enough time to be able to prepare your answers and be able to come into the exam with them. So what we're going to look at today is the actual exam questions, and yes, they are the real questions. It is a scene exam and it is an open book exam. So what you will be able to do is prepare the answers to these real questions and bring them in with you and be able to copy out the answers. And we're going to be looking at how are you going to be successful in each of these questions? What are we actually looking for? What research are you going to have to do over this term? What sort of information do you need to find and actually bring out of each of the lectures that as you go through the course? And what you're going to have is the advantage of knowing what information you're going to need for the exam. And all of the lectures this term and all of the tutorials this term will lead you towards being very successful in this exam. So just to recap how this fits within the unit, you are currently working on your digital agency project as a group with your individual blog posts as well. And that is worth 40% of your overall grade for the unit. And that means you've got 60% left for the exam. So this exam, this open book exam, is going to be 2 hours long and worth 60% of your overall grade. As with all assessments, the required pass for an exam is 40%, and you're going to need to be able to get 40% of the overall pass for the module. So when you add your mark from coursework 1 and you add together your mark from the exam, it should be 40% to pass this module. So we just want you to understand how this fits together with the other assessment that you're currently working on. So as with each of your exams on the different modules, we have a specific format for this. And what you need to be aware of is this is a pre-seen open book examination, which means that you are going to see the questions from today. If you go on Moodle, you will be able to see the exam paper. And the only thing that's going to change on that exam paper is at the moment it says it's to be confirmed for the exam room, but that's going to change to the exact exam time and place. So apart from that, that is what your exam paper is going to look like on the day of the exam. You're going to be able to bring in pre-prepared material with you. So that's an open book exam. You can bring in any materials with you, but within reason, as you get one small desk for yourself. And also you've got to remember, you've only got 2 hours to answer 3 exam questions. You're going to have to do 1 from section 1 and 2 from section 2. And with this, that means that you're going to have to be really savvy about the material that you bring in. As you know the questions and you know that you can bring material in with you, I would advise you to prepare answers for these and copy them out in the exam. And the reason why that we actually do a scene exam is we don't want to actually be looking at your ability to remember research. So we're going to be looking at an open book scene exam, and this will stress the importance of your research skills and your ability to prepare your answers, and therefore be able to prepare answers that you're able to copy out in the time period. What this will do, hopefully for you guys, is actually reduce your stress on the day and actually improve your grades and your success on this unit, as you're not going to be focusing on memory and therefore having stress-induced memory lapses, and you're not actually going to be having the issue of have you revised the right topic or the wrong topic, because you're going to know the exact questions going into the exam and be able to prepare for them. This also allows you to pick which questions you want to answer and actually research them a lot and be able to view all of the research in this area, all of the lecture slides that we give you in this area, all of the additional reading in this area, and with your coursework assignments, actually be able to spend weeks preparing an answer for this rather than a few minutes to prepare your plan and start writing what you've got from memory. One of the things that this will also do is actually reduce the concerns of plagiarism. If you were all copying out exactly the same quotes from slides or exactly the same phrases that are used by lecturers, then obviously we're going to be seeing these same memorized quotes and topics and actual phrases that we see all the time in the exam questions, and therefore we always start feeling like the answers are exactly the same. Whereas because you're going to have time to prepare and come up with your own case studies and be able to research on Google Scholar, on the library website, on the different databases that we've got available to you, on the different periodicals, on the different magazines that you've got access to in industry, you're going to be looking to have very different answers, and therefore we're going to see and have much less of this chance and concern of plagiarism. And those who, what we have actually seen is that we get much higher grades from people in this type of exam than we do in the exam where you get given the questions on the day or you're unable to bring in your content. So what that means for you guys is you can pre-prepare for it, you can do loads of research, and it should take away the stress. So that's some of the reasons of why we're doing an open book examination. We had to do an exam in this unit, and we've chose to do an open book scene exam to try and help you guys and be able to get you some fantastic grades on this unit. So if you have actually already opened the exam paper on Moodle, you will actually see that you've got 2 sections to this exam. Everyone here listening to this lecture and this Google Hangout will have to answer section A. It's the same question, but you'll be able to pick from 2 topics within section A. And then in section B, you've got 5 questions and you need to answer 2 of them. What you don't know at the moment from the exam is the time and the date, but this will be in the exam period, which starts on the 29th of April and runs throughout April, the rest of April and May. And what you will need to do is check on your application and on the MMU area on the website, the exam area. And once the exam timetable is finalised, it will show your personalised timetable. But also, as soon as I know the exact room, the exact time, and where your exam is and when it's going to be, I will obviously announce this to you as well. But the format of the exam is you're going to have a 2-hour exam. It's going to be within the exam period, and it's going to be an open book exam, a scene exam, and you have to answer section A and 2 questions from section B. So hopefully that's really clear to you. So section A has 1 question on it. So if you look at this question, I'm going to read it out and then we're going to look at what this actually means for you guys doing some research and starting to think about these questions and what you can be doing over the next 13, 14, 15 weeks to make sure that you're in the best position to answer these questions. You're going to have to provide an evaluation of one contemporary area of digital marketing explored during the course of this unit. This evaluation should consist of a definition, the main features, the benefits and drawbacks for an organisation using this area of digital marketing, and a conclusive statement. And the choice of the digital areas to be explored are online influencers or newsjacking. So that means in section A, you're going to have to research, define, look at the main features, look at the benefits and drawbacks for organisations, and actually come up with a conclusion for online influencers or newsjacking. So these are going to be 2 lectures that we do throughout the year. So you're going to get a lot more information on that. So looking at this is straight away, you can see that you're going to have to find a definition for online influencers or newsjacking. So for example, if you pick online influencers, how would you define an online influencer? So we're going to want you to go to a textbook or go to a really credible industry source such as the Digital Marketing Association or the CIPR and get a definition of what an online influencer is. How is an online influencer different than someone who's just good at the internet? So we're going to be looking for that. And we're going to be looking for the main features of what an online influencer is. So a lot of you will be familiar with Instagram influencers. So what are some of the features of, say, of a Instagram influencer? And I would say to you that you need to look at some examples such as Zoella and Joe Wicks. You'll be able to look at some other examples maybe in your own social networks where you'll be able to see some case studies of these online influencers. And with that, you'll actually start being able to look at some of what the benefits that could happen to an organisation if they use these, or some of the drawbacks. And then also you're going to have to come up with a conclusion. So we are going to be looking at the main features of an online influencer. So what are these? What are the academic theories? What is WARC telling you? So WARC, which is a database on the library website. What's that telling you about online influencers? What is the Digital Marketing Association telling you about best practice in online influencers? What are some of the really good credible blog posts that different agencies are putting out there about online influencers? And what sort of platforms are they on? So we've mentioned Instagram, but there are other platforms. You've got YouTube stars. You're going to have people who have millions of followers on Twitter. You're going to have big Facebook followers. When we go into different markets, you may want to talk about people who have a lot of followers and a lot of contacts on platforms such as WeChat. And how do organisations use these? So what is the benefit of an organisation such as Tesco using Joe Wicks and to advertise their healthy food section? What is the advantage of Superdrug having Zoella do a segment on their beauty products? So you'll need to be looking at the benefits to an organisation of using one and how online influencers use their networks to actually use a credible and humanised voice to talk for the organisation. So those sorts of comments are going to come out. And what are also some of the drawbacks for an organisation if they use online influencers, and taking the conversation out of their hands and putting it in those of an online influencer? And there's going to be some negative impacts of that. So what happens if the influencer forgets to use, for example, #ad and there's a big fine? What's going to happen if the organisation finds out in a few months that they've done a partnership with someone who really is against their brand values and gets caught up in some form of public relations scandal? So you're going to have to use some of these drawbacks and some of these benefits and then come up with a conclusive statement of, is this a really good digital marketing tool for people to use as an organisation and as a client, or would you recommend a different tool over it, and why? So you're going to have to be looking at those different things. So that's section A. You're going to be looking at online influencers or news tracking, and you're going to be going through the definitions, the main features, the benefits, the drawbacks, and actually coming up with a conclusion. So you will get marks for a really good introduction that defines the topic, a section on the main features of what these are. So for example, news tracking, what is the main features of news tracking? What's the difference between good online public relations and actually jacking some news? And what are the drawbacks and what are the benefits? So we're going to be looking at these sections and then coming up with a conclusive statement and telling the reader of your exam paper what is your opinion on online influencers or news tracking and how good is this for organisations. Moving on from this section, we're going to be looking at section B. The difference here, and what I want to reiterate now, and I'm going to make sure is very clear in all of the times that I talk about this exam paper, but hopefully nobody will fall foul of this year, but it happened in the last few years. You've only got to answer 2 questions from this section. Please do not answer all 5 because we can only mark 2 of them and award you marks for 2 of them. We can't award you marks for all 5, even if you manage to super speedily write out 5 answers. So you're only going to be able to answer 2 questions from this section. So the first question that you could pick is online consumer behaviour. So what we are actually going to be looking at over the next few weeks is online consumer behaviour. So what do we do online and how do we consume online? And this will really fit in with some of the stuff that you've been doing in Principles of Marketing over the first term. And we're going to be looking at how does online behaviour influence our strategies online, how do organisations present themselves online, how do social media communities affect our ability to consume online and actually make us do different types of consumption online. And we're going to be looking at all those different things, and we're going to be looking at what basically is online consumer behaviour and why does that differentiate from just consumer behaviour. So in this question, we're going to actually want you to evaluate how new online communities have influenced consumer behaviour. So what that actually means for you guys is that there's some key words there. New online communities and influencing consumer behaviour. So straight away, we're going to be talking over the next few weeks about online consumer behaviour and what has changed over the last 5-10 years. And you're going to be focusing on this. You're not going to be looking at historic information about websites in the late 90s and what people did online then. We're going to be looking about online communities now and how are they consuming. So we're going to be looking at recent and our current consumption online. And then we're going to be asking you to support your answer providing examples from 2 social media communities. So what we mean by social media communities is maybe on Instagram, which can be one social media community, versus Mumsnet, which is a completely different way to consume online. So on Mumsnet, you're going to be getting a forum where people will ask questions, people will provide answers, and you'll get loads of helpful information. Whereas on Instagram, it might be communities where people have followed an influencer or have followed a person who is interested in health and fitness and are getting tips and are changing their consumption online and where they purchase and their gym attire based on the things that are put on that Instagram account. So you need to think about communities that are really different. The other thing that you've got to think about is being able to contrast 2 examples that are really different. So Mumsnet and Instagram are really different, whereas if you pick Snapchat and Instagram, the communities and some of the ways that we use those platforms might be very similar. So what I would say to you is that you need to look at this really carefully and look at how you're going to use these different communities and start thinking about them. And you're going to have to use some academic evidence, so credible academic evidence. So we are going to be asking you to get some journal articles and some databases, and we're going to be expecting that for a pass. So how do I actually want this answer to look on the page? So I'm going to want you to define what online consumer behaviour is. I'm going to then want you to actually look at what new online communities are. How is online communities actually influencing our consumer behaviour? So we are going to look at different models, but one of them that you already know from Principles of Marketing is the customer decision-making process. So how could someone on Instagram and an Instagram community actually influence that model and influence your decision-making to purchase maybe some gym leggings versus Mumsnet for gym leggings? So how would you go for it? How would those different communities actually affect that consumption theory? And we're going to be doing that over the next few weeks, and you're going to be able to look at that. So starting off over the next week or two, you're going to be doing research in what are the different social media communities, coming up with some research around online consumer behaviour and some journal articles that will help you understand what online consumer behaviour is, some textbooks that will come up with the consumer behaviour theories, and you can obviously use your POM textbook for that and other ones that you're going to add to this, and you're going to be able to then apply it to social media communities and actual consumption online and the products online. So we're going to be asking you to do quite a lot of research for these answers. And for online consumer behaviour, you're obviously in a great position because you've already understood some of these theories based on your Principles of Marketing unit. Then another question that you could pick, and hopefully this will not scare you, is measurement and analytics. So what do we as digital marketers observe from a customer on a website is basically what we're thinking about in this question. So we're going to be asking you to describe what customer activities the digital marketer can observe on a website. So by this, we mean things like how long we stay on a page, what is our sticky rate, what is our bounce rate, the clicks, and how many clicks that we go through a website on. What point do people drop off a page? How long do people stay on a page? What data do we collect from them? Do we ask them for their email address? What API and IP address stuff information do we take? What cookies do we use to actually work out if someone has been on our website, then back on Google, and therefore we see display ads and those sorts of things. So we're going to be looking at what can we actually measure and observe on a website from customers. And we're going to be looking at how would we then use that. So then we're going to be looking at, when considering these activities, explain what actions the digital marketer can take in order to improve future campaigns. So if you've got a website that's got a really high bounce rate where people come on and just bounce straight back off a page, or there's part of a website that never gets clicked through to, how are they going to get people to go onto those pages? Maybe you want to seed those pages. Maybe you want to change the website slightly so that these pages are actually clicked through onto. Are we going to be using video content to make sure that people are looking at different parts of a website? How are we actually going to use the tools and activities and techniques that we've learned to help use this data and actually strategically change the way that the website is being used, and therefore what information we can use to improve future campaigns? And with this, as always, and with all of these questions throughout the exam paper, we're going to ask you to use some credible academic evidence to illustrate these behaviours and actions mentioned above. So what you are going to get throughout this course is actually some real data from the Manchester Metropolitan website and their Facebook. So if their Facebook page, and actually some of the measurements and analytics that we get from that. And if you're a bit savvy, you'll be able to use some of that data and actually describe that case study within this question, and then also bring in some journal articles and bring in some textbook information and bring in some industry sources and this industry data around where the future of marketing is and how we are improving dead parts of websites and bounce rates, all of this information, and tying it together with a real website that you've been able to look at some of the measurements and analytics and bring this question to life. So that would be the best way to approach this question and looking at the measurement and analytics. So that's going to be the second topic we look at this year, is measurement and analytics, and what do we do in a website, and therefore what strategic recommendations can a digital marketer make to improve these activities and therefore bring better future campaigns for an organisation. Question number 3 is always a really popular question for this exam. Every year we pick a different campaign, but we are looking at politics on the internet, and specifically politics and governance on social media. So we are going to be looking at Barack Obama's campaign, we're going to be looking at Donald Trump, we're going to be looking at Corbyn, we're going to be looking at the last few general elections, the Brexit campaign, and all of this stuff in our lectures around how has social media changed the way that we vote and the way that we interact as younger voters and other voters on social media, and actually engage in a two-way conversation with our politicians and our government and those different things. So we're going to be looking at that really carefully over the next term, and specifically in the lecture where we look at politics and governance. But your exam question is looking at the 2017 general election. So we want you to describe and discuss how content on social media was utilised in the 2017 general election campaign. So straight away, you can be able to do some research on the different political parties and how they use social media during that campaign. That is factual data that you can look up straight away. You can look at it today, tomorrow, over the next 13 weeks. Without even having the lecture, you'll be able to look at that data and actually work out what did the different parties do on the internet for this campaign. And what you are going to have to do is come up with 3 examples and evaluate the impact of these social media content on the younger voter. So what we're going to be asking you to do is actually define what a younger voter is. So we're going to ask you to find a reference and find out what a younger voter is. And we're going to be asking you to discuss 3 pieces of content and how has that impacted the younger voter. So straight away, you'll be able to look at social media content. So maybe you want to look at Instagram versus Snapchat versus Twitter, or you want to look at Instagram versus Facebook versus Twitter. There's loads of different platforms out there, and I would advise you to actually look at platforms which are different for each of your examples, just because you will then see the different types of content that is put out there and whether or not that content is actually good and influencing young voters, or should politicians be doing something different to open up politics to these younger voters and encourage voters to go out to the polling stations and vote Conservative or vote Labour or vote Lib Dems or vote Independent Party or vote for whatever party they're actually advocating for. And as with all of the questions, and I'm going to keep repeating this, you need to do some academic, credible evidence to show this impact. So we're not looking for blog posts, we're looking for Office of National Statistics, we're looking for white paper reports, we're looking for information from the polling station of how many people voted, what percentage of them were the younger voters, therefore what percentage of younger voters actually went out to vote. Of these younger voters, how many of them in the exit polls said that they were influenced by social media? There'll be loads of surveys out there and loads of data that's coming out about the 2017 general election, and we're out on the cusp of a lot of journal articles that have started to come out around social media and politics, and how is this impacting the younger voters and other voting ages. And what you're going to be focusing on within this is how does the social media content actually impact the younger voters, and is it successful or not, and evaluating that. So that's what we're going to be looking for in this third question if you pick it. But once again, you're only picking 2 questions. So we'll move on to the next one, which is also an extremely popular question for people to answer, and it's viral marketing. So we want you to look at viral marketing, and we're going to be doing a lecture on viral marketing and looking and critically analysing what is viral marketing and what value can this add to a brand. So we've got some really great examples that we can talk about that hopefully you will be aware of, such as the Old Spice campaign around the Super Bowl, and different campaigns that have gone really, really viral over the last few years, the Ice Bucket Challenge. We're going to be looking at those sorts of campaigns and what makes that a viral campaign versus just good marketing and doing well on the internet. So we're going to actually ask you to critique and come up with a definition and come up with characteristics and features of what's the difference between just good marketing and viral marketing. And then we're going to be asking you to pick one viral marketing campaign. So we don't want you to be looking at loads of different case studies, just one viral marketing campaign of your choice, and actually evaluate what value did this add to the brand. So if you looked at, for example, Old Spice, you would be looking at how many more followers did they have? How did it improve brand awareness? How did it improve sales? How did it improve the brand's reputation? How did it improve awareness of Old Spice? And all of these different things. And we're going to be wanting you to come up with these sorts of evaluation of the value it's added to the brand through some academically credible sources. So we're not going to be wanting you to look at just Facebook and YouTube and some of the comments that are made underneath these videos and saying, oh yeah, people say it's brilliant. What we're going to be wanting you to do is actually go into places like awards, like the Cannes Lion Awards, go on to different databases such as Walk, where you'll be able to look at case studies and some of the analytics about case studies and how much return of investment people got from this, how much was the increase in followers, how long was it to get this increase in followers, at what point did they evaluate this. And we're going to be looking for that sort of information and you to actually look at and evaluate carefully how much value was added to the brand from this viral campaign and why did you choose this viral campaign to discuss. And you'll come up with some really good sources for that. The last question that you can pick from, so question number 5 in section B, is about social media and employability. And we're going to be looking at this as the last topic before we finish and start with doing revision sessions. But how can social media make you more employable? How would having a LinkedIn account make you more employable? How would having a presence on social media help you network? How would having a social media account help you get a role within marketing? And is there an issue of, if you don't have any social media accounts, you not being able to get a job within marketing because you can't be found on the internet? So we're going to be looking at how do you help and hinder your abilities to get a job by using social media. And we're going to be wanting you to justify this with some credible academic evidence again. So what we're going to be looking for in this is like, what is social media? So you can come up with a definition of what social media is, what some examples of social media platforms, and examples of when people have used social media to help them become employed. So having online CVs on platforms such as LinkedIn, being able to network in places like Instagram, on Twitter, and being able to join a conversation. But also how, if you mismanage your social media, it can hinder your ability to get a job. So how people have used social media silly and actually got themselves fired by posting inappropriate things on Facebook, their manager seeing it and then them getting fired, such as, I'm off sick today, haha, no I'm not, I'm in Vegas, and then their manager seeing this and then them getting fired because they're in Vegas, or doing something inappropriate in the workplace and posting it on social media and someone seeing this and getting fired, or just having a really immature, unprofessional, partying all the time persona on social media. How is that going to hinder your job, and are people going to take you seriously in your chosen career if you have that perception of you publicly on your social media accounts? So we're going to be looking at how can you improve your employability through social media, but also looking at some of the critiques of social media and actually looking at how employability can be improved, but also if you mismanage social media and your employers and future potential employers see your social media mismanagement and how that can actually hinder your job opportunities too. And hopefully that will spur you on to make sure that by the time you graduate, your social media accounts will improve your employability rather than hinder it. And we're going to be looking at how some journal articles in this, and you can look at, there are some great journal articles out there about how to use social media to improve graduate employment and also keeping jobs and getting promotions because of social media. So we're going to be integrating some of those into the tutorials and asking you to and expecting you to find those sorts of articles for this question. So in summary, that's what you're going to have to be looking at over the next term. And now you will know that over the next few weeks, we're going to be looking at, first of all, some of the topics around online consumer behaviour. We're going to be looking at measurements and analytics. We're going to be looking at how do we use social media and the internet to target young voters and voters in general, and online politics. We're going to be looking at viral marketing. We're going to be looking at online public relations, and within that we've obviously got newsjacking and viral marketing and some of the public relations management of digital marketing that falls within those. And we're going to be looking at using social media to help your own career progression with employability. And within these topics, we're going to be mentioning a lot things like social commerce. We're going to be looking at gamification. So how do companies use games to help engage with you on social media? And it has that. And things like Pokemon Go, how has that changed the way that we consume? And therefore, how has that created a different community online, and how has that changed our behaviour? And we're going to be looking at things like, what is a social media influencer and what is an online influencer, and how does that tie in within these different questions? Because obviously we will have online influencers that could be part of social media communities. We will have online influencers that can help influence the political debate, and should therefore political parties be using influencers to help them and their campaigns to target these younger audiences? Is a part of viral marketing actually being an influencer and getting your video shared by influencers? And how does that impact your employability if you actually become an influencer? So there are some topics that will be embedded within all of these questions that you're going to have to be aware of, but also help you answer section A. So for section A, you're going to be looking at online influencers, and you're going to be getting a lot of information about influencers over the entire term, not just in one lecture. And you're going to be, or you could be looking at newsjacking, which is online public relations, and that ties in with some of these topics as well, such as how would you use online public relations to talk with politicians and therefore target people? How does viral marketing fit within online public relations, and how do we use online public relations to try and influence behaviour? and therefore how do we use newsjacking, which is one technique that we have within that, to actually have a conversation. So over the next few weeks, we're going to be looking at all of these topics individually, but also tying them together. So what are you wanting to give you the questions up front? So as you go through these topics and get given these topics, you can start preparing your answers and you can research them straight away. So what we've been doing this week in the tutorials, if you've already had it, and if not, you're going to be having your tutorial this week, where you're going to be doing your final one-to-group meeting with your tutor about your current group assignment that's due in 2 weeks' time. And then next week, we are actually going to be looking against these questions and actually getting you some of these academic references. So if I'm looking for information about online communities, what database would help? And we're going to be breaking you down into groups to actually crowdsource some academic references as your tutorial group. And therefore, you're going to have some really good research. So between your tutorial group, you're going to have a massive amount of academic references that are all credible that you can use as a starting point moving forward throughout this term to be able to research and be able to answer these questions. So we're going to be asking you to start thinking about how to plan your answers, what sort of academic references we expect in each of these questions. And you're going to leave that tutorial next week with a list of academic references that will set you in good stead to answer these exam questions over the next few weeks and over the next term to be able to come back and successfully answer these exam questions. We also know next week you may be distracted by the fact that you've got your group assignment due in the week after, and we'll have time within that tutorial to actually for you to ask us some final questions. But we're going to be focusing on research skills and making sure that you can find the journal articles and the case studies required for these exam questions. And that's what we were expecting you to do next. Next week, we'll obviously have our first lecture on the topics that you're going to be doing your exam questions on. And you will then, from the week after, have a seminar that is relating to an exam question each week. So you're going to have this term looking at exam questions. We're going to be looking at some really great case studies. And each week, we're going to be doing a few minutes, 15, 20 minutes at the end of each session going, how does this relate to the exam question? Therefore, helping you actually structure your thinking and work out where does this fit within this exam paper, and is this a question that I've decided to answer, and is this an area that I need to now go away and do the further reading and do further research on to be able to help me answer this question. So we've structured this term so you know what the question is for your assessment, and you're going to be able to do research as you go along to be able to answer your exam questions. At the end of this term, you're going to be going away for Easter, and you're going to have 3 weeks to revise and finish off your questions. And you're going to come back, and potentially your exam could be that first week back. There isn't any revision sessions after Easter. So we have built this course to make sure that you leave for Easter with your exam questions pretty much done, and some feedback has been given to you on that if you wanted it, and if you spent the time to prepare these questions. So obviously I've spoken to you for the last 45 minutes and I've gone through why have we done the exam in this way. We've gone through the exact exam questions and some of the things that we're going to be looking for in each of these exam questions, and what's the sort of content that we're going to be expecting and the sort of research that you're going to be required to do. But I just wanted to open up now into the chat, and also on the I'll type it in here, the Twitter feed, which is hashtag DMMP1819 on Twitter, to see if there's any questions. So obviously on the chat or on the Twitter page, you could now ask any questions that you have. If not, if I don't get any questions, I will sign out and see you all next week when we start talking in detail about some of these topics around online consumer behaviour. So looking at your hashtag, there is absolutely no questions at the moment. And then looking next of all, I will look at the chat on the actual dump page. So let's look at that. And we've got no questions on that as well. So what I'm going to do now is say thank you very much for those of you who have managed to stay all the way to the end. The rest of you obviously will catch it up on Moodle, and I hope and wish you all of the luck with your submission tomorrow for dump, not for dump, for POM, and in the next 2 weeks for dump. And I will see you all in the lectures next week. Have a great week, and I will see you then. Thank you. Bye.